Welcome to another episode of MedTalk. My name is Dr. Tushar Patel and I am your host. We have a distinguished physician guest, Dr. Robert G. Lahitha with us today. Dr. Lahitha is a director of Institute of Autoimmune and Rheumatic Diseases and also a professor of medicine at Hackensack Meridian School of Medicine. He is also a clinical professor at Rutgers Medical School. Dr. Lahitha is our expert physician during this pandemic and has been providing his expertise and valuable information to our viewers since the pandemic began last year. Welcome back, Dr. Lahitha, to MedTalk on our continued discussion on current state of pandemic.
Thank you, Dr. Patel.
So after almost 1.5 years into this pandemic, Dr. Lahitha, we are at a critical juncture with this pandemic. Now with the Delta variant on rise in the USA, what can you tell us about the replications and mutations and new variants coming to the USA?
Well, we know that the Delta variant comprises roughly 88% of the infections in the United States. We also know that if you're vaccinated, your chances of being in the hospital, in the ICU, and dying are much less than if you were not vaccinated. So many people have called this the pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Yes.
There is also a variant called the Lambda variant, which is also highly infective and is coming from Peru. Latin America has a lot of Lambda variant in it, and it is very, very infective, as is the Delta variant. Now, I have some data here that the vaccine efficacy is important because that will lead us up to our discussion. And I'm sure, Dr. Patel, you're going to ask me about booster shots because everybody
Yes.
The Pfizer vaccine, originally 88% effective, reports indicate recently that it's now 64 to 80% effective with regard to the Delta variant. I also have the J&J vaccine reported as 60% effective against the Delta variant, although the data out of South Africa that I've just seen suggests that the J&J vaccine is much more effective, like in the 80% range, much like the Pfizer vaccine.
Wow.
Moderna, we don't have any report of effectiveness percentage against the Delta variant yet at this time. There may be. Now, breakthrough infections can occur in people who were vaccinated with either the J&J, Moderna, or the Pfizer vaccine. And that's very, very important. These are being reported daily in the United States and can cause substantial illnesses with fever, headache, fatigue, brain fog, muscle, body aches, which last for approximately 1 week. So it's not horrible, but it's not great either because obviously no one wants to get infected.
Yes.
And then lastly, everyone is asking me about the influenza vaccine. Should we get it? When should we get it? Is it important to get now that the pandemic is still full throttle? And my answer to that is yes, you should get it, but I don't know if you should get both of them together. If you haven't been vaccinated, please get vaccinated. That's what I'm telling everyone because we don't appear to be ever going to reach herd immunity, which, as I mentioned on your program before,
yes,
between 75 and 80 to 85% vaccination rates for the population as a whole in this country. So we'd like to get herd immunity as soon as possible, if we can. But as you know, President Biden has asked us since July 4th to increase vaccinations, and now we're about 70%. We were 68% on July 4th, but there's been a major effort to immunize young people between the ages of 12 and up, 12 to 18, basically, in middle school and high school. So that's where we stand currently with regard to the Delta variant.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lahitha, for that Delta variant update. So let me ask you a question. What is your biggest concern at this time with this pandemic? Where do we see United States is going?
Well, I don't want to see a lockdown. I don't want to see a lockdown again. Now, as you know, the CDC and the FDA, mostly the CDC, has said that we should wear masks again indoors. If we're indoors and we don't know whether the people that we are with and socializing with have been vaccinated or not, we should definitely wear masks to protect ourselves and to protect them. Why protect them? Because If you have the Delta variant, it can reside in you, even if you're vaccinated. It's about 1,000 times more as far as viral load goes. It's 3 times more transmissible to other people. Even though you may not have symptoms, you're capable of passing on the virus to those who are not vaccinated. So this is very, very important as a point. And so if you are indoors, the recommendation is now to wear a mask. If you're outdoors, my feeling is that you don't have to wear a mask at all. If you're outdoors and in open air and you're jogging or bicycling or sitting at a football or ball or baseball game, I don't think you need to wear a mask unless you're sitting next to 15 people who are literally a half a foot from you.
Yes.
So that's a different story. But you have to be careful. Now, if you're in a gymnasium, and I'm going to get to the school issue in a minute. If you're getting me, Dr. Patel, to talk about all these things in one lump sum.
Yes.
But if you're in a gymnasium and a restaurant, you probably should wear a mask until such time as you eat in the restaurant. But in the gym, I would advise wearing the mask throughout your workout, because in gyms are very, very noisy. As you know, everybody's yelling. There's a lot of sweating. And that also goes for yoga classes as well. I've been asked that. So you've got to, it's better to be safe than to make an error. Schools. Everyone is interested in schools. I don't want to see a lockdown of businesses. If it meant to be, as you know, Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo in New York and Governor Murphy in New Jersey and other places around the country, Governor Gavin Newsom in California, have all suggested that teachers be mandated to be vaccinated, as well as ancillary personnel like secretaries, janitors, etc. So they should be vaccinated. They're adults. If you're a young child below the age of 12, you have an obligation, or at least the parents have an obligation, to make sure that the child wears a mask. Now, that's a very difficult thing. You can't really have a mask on a young child and expect that child to wear that mask for any length of time, mostly because of their being so small and because they make a lot of noise. And you know how children are. And there's no current vaccine for children below the age of 12.
Right.
However, in the middle school, high school, over the age of 12, all of those children should be vaccinated. Now, you can be vaccinated above the age of 12 if you get the Pfizer vaccine. If you get the Moderna vaccine, you have to be over the age of 18. Yes. And that's a little bit different. And there's a lot of discussion about restaurants only allowing in people who show proof of vaccination or proof of antigen absence, which means you get the test and you show within 3 days that you don't have the virus. And that's a little touchy because that's infringing on people's freedoms. But when you ask the store owners or the restaurateurs, you say, well, what would you rather have? Would you rather have restrictions or would you rather close down? And they all say, we'd rather have restrictions. And that makes sense because we don't want to close businesses down anymore. They have been closed down for too long and businesses have suffered and restaurants have closed, obviously. So that's where we are with the whole current controversy with regard to schools and openings of stores and restaurants.
So you discussed the currently available vaccines and the status of the vaccinated in the USA. What are the challenges do you see currently and the way we are heading now? What is your predictions about achieving the herd or community immunity?
In the US or around the world?
In the USA.
Okay, so I don't know if we can achieve herd immunity. We have roughly 75 million people who are not vaccinated. And with that number and the fact that variants are occurring and variants will continue to happen if people are not vaccinated, because once the virus gets a foothold in an individual and infects him total body, the variants develop. And as you know, the Delta variant came from India, because there was a vast number of poor people as well as others who were not vaccinated and who were able to cultivate variants and mutations. And if the mutation occurs and it's a much more robust mutation, it will take hold. Now, for your viewers, there are up mutations, which means the virus gets more infected, more transmissible, but there are also down mutations where the virus goes away. and simply dies. So it favors the up mutation, which is the Delta and the Lambda variants. And there undoubtedly will be more variants as we go forward. Hopefully, we will, with increased vaccinations, be able to achieve some sort of herd immunity. If we can get 80 to 85% of the population immunized, we should be okay. But it's going to be with us forever. This virus is not going to go away. I think it's going to be with us just like influenza is with us. We may have to be immunized every year against this virus.
So let's talk about the vaccine hesitancy and lower number of vaccination people are receiving in few states in the USA where we have a problem right now. There is so much information, rumors about the safety of the vaccine. What can you tell our viewers about the safety and efficacy of this vaccine?
Okay. Safety-wise, it is extremely safe. Now, when I say that, I quote numbers it's 95% effective, let's say for Moderna and for the Pfizer vaccine. That means there's 5% that are not effective. And that doesn't count the patients who have comorbidities. And those comorbidities are diabetes, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, people over 75, extreme obesity. This is just to name a few things that make people vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, it means that you're at higher risk of getting the virus and winding up in the hospital ICU or even dying. So those are some of the major issues that we have to concern ourselves with going forward. The vaccine is very safe. The messenger RNA vaccines especially are very safe. People they've heard all sorts of rumors, infertility, causes deformities in children, occupies your brain, integrates itself into your DNA. I could go on and on. All of that is a lot of baloney. There's also a crowd out there that say, well, this is not an FDA approved vaccine. It is an emergency use authorization. And that is true. And I implore the FDA almost every week to make sure that the FDA approval is finalized, because there's some hesitancy. I don't know how real it is, but I would imagine there are a couple of 100,000 people who, if the FDA approved this vaccine, would take it. And the whole hesitancy thing would be gone with that population. But we have to overcome people's fears of side effects. Now, we have heard side effects. And, if you get 300 people with Guillain-Barré, which is a neurologic illness as a result of the J&J vaccine, that's 300 patients out of 140 million recipients, which is minuscule. Of course, it's not minuscule if you're one of the 300.
Yes.
Yeah, you know how that goes. So that's what people say. Well, when you get on an airplane, you're more likely to arrive at your destination than if you drive in your car or you get struck by lightning. It always happens to somebody, but hopefully it will not happen to you. So that should not be the reason for not to be vaccinated. Yes. So these hesitancy issues are very, very real, and people talk about them all the time. And I think I'm going to write a piece for Psychology Today. They called me and said, would you write a piece on vaccine hesitancy? I'd be glad to do that.
Yes.
I've heard it all.
So how far are we with the FDA approval of this vaccination, at least Pfizer or Moderna?
We're on the cusp of it.
Yeah.
We're on the cusp of total official approval. In fact, we're on the cusp of having a vaccine for children between the ages of 5 and 12. And sometime, probably early 2022, we'll have a vaccine for children between the age of 5 and 6 months. So the little children will be able to be vaccinated and protected. Because right now, when I go to my grandchildren, my one grandson is only 10 and he has to wear a mask. My granddaughter's 13 and she doesn't. She gets the vaccine. So you see the problem. So now in school, you have the teachers saying, well, all these little children can transmit this virus. They probably don't get very sick. We know that children very rarely, except the new Delta variant, the incidence of children with the virus has gone up. But for the most part, children don't get very sick. They can be infected, but not ill. And so the key here is they can also transmit the virus to those adults who are not immunized. And that is a problem for teachers who are not
Yes.
immunized.
So I think two things. When the FDA approves this vaccination, that will be a game changer. And when the vaccines available between age 5 and 12, that will be another game changer for the overall outcome of this pandemic. Is that correct?
That's correct. You got it.
Yes. Yes. So when do we expect changes in our routine life from this current pandemic to new normal in upcoming months, especially when the fall and winter months begin? Do you see September, October, November will be challenging for the USA when the winter kicks in?
Yes, I do. And why is that? Because people are going to gather in warm rooms. They're going to be gathering together to stay warm, and they will not be wearing masks for the most part. And if they don't wear masks, we may see a bump up of the Delta virus infection, or maybe the Lambda if it comes along and is more infective than the Delta. We will see an increase in infections as the climate gets colder. We'll also see flu increase.
Yes.
So we're going to see, and we're going to have to make the differentiation between influenza and COVID-19.
19, yes.
So
Yes.
that's going to be very, very tricky.
Very tricky and challenging. So, Dr. Lahitha, you are one of the most reputed physicians in the country, and so far, all your predictions are based on the science and epidemiology, and very much you are on top of this pandemic. I want you to ask last question and last message, a take-home message for our viewers, what that would be.
Well, right now, Dr. Patel, the interest of today is the booster shot. Now, if you have been vaccinated 8 months ago, and we're going to probably, the president has suggested that all healthcare workers be immunized, including myself. I got my shot back in January, so I will probably require a booster for the Delta variant. That's going around for people with chronic obstructive lung disease, diabetes, obesity, cancers, people under chemotherapy, people who have autoimmune diseases like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjögren's syndrome, vasculitis. I could go down the list. Anybody who's immunocompromised, anybody who has an organ transplant like a kidney transplant or a heart transplant, they will need to get a booster. It should be 8 months out from your original vaccine. This data comes from Israel, where they have noted that the neutralizing antibody levels have waned, have gone down. Now, cellular immunity, which is another arm of the immune system, has come forward, and that is, in fact, going to happen. That cellular immunity doesn't go away, and I think it's very strong, but we're not measuring that. We're measuring neutralizing antibody. So my take-home message is if they offer a booster shot, you should probably get it, especially if you're over 70 years of age. The elderly, nursing homes, assisted care facilities, all should get the booster shot.
And all healthcare workers as well. Is that correct?
Healthcare workers, and perhaps teachers and other ancillary personnel. Now, Dr. Patel, I want to put a plug in for my new book, which is coming out in November, called Immunity Strong. It is not available yet, but it is on Amazon and you can pre-order it. And it explains a lot of things for the layperson about immunity, vaccines, the biomes, what you need to know about your immune system, and how to live to be 100 years of age and not succumb to COVID-19.
Wonderful. So I'll tell my viewers to look for that Immunity Strong on Amazon right now. Is it available now, or when it will be available?
You can pre-order it, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. You can pre-order it now, but it will not be available until the first week of November.
Okay.
Just be on your guard for it.
Okay.
You hear a lot about it.
Wonderful. Thank you for that information. Thank you, Dr. Lahitha, for your time and providing your expertise to IndusTV viewers, and appreciate your dedicated service to medical communities in Tri-State and beyond, and providing education via interviews and seminars during this pandemic. I would wish you all the best, stay blessed, and thank you for your service once again.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. It's been a pleasure.